Okay, so I'm going to take a look at just 2 answers from your homework tonight since you only had 4. But your assignment is page 587, number 16 through 19. So let's start by looking at number 16. Okay, so 16 says x squared plus 8x plus 11 equals 0. Okay, this is in the correct format for the quadratic formula. So that says a equals 1, b equals 8, c equals 11. So if we plug that into the formula, we'll have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a, which is now 1, times c, which is now 11, all over 2 times a. Okay, so if we start simplifying underneath the square root, right, either with a calculator, by hand, whatever, but if we simplify underneath the square root, so we'll have 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 11, so we get 20. It says negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 20 all over 2. Right, we then said we would check that square root to see if it's a perfect square. So if I check the square root of 20, right, getting this big long decimal in my calculator says that it's not a perfect square and that I then need to try and simplify it. Okay, so to simplify it, I'm going to prime factor that 20. So it prime factors into a 2 times 5. I have a pair of 2's. So, right, each pair comes out in front. The leftover stuff is inside. So now I have negative 8 plus or minus the square root, or plus or minus 2 square root 5 all over 2. Okay, now at this point, we're looking at all 3 outside numbers. So I'm looking at those 3 numbers. Okay, and I want to see if I can reduce them all by something. So is there something that divides into each of them individually or evenly? Which is 2. Okay, so I can divide these all by 2. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. This 2 divided by 2 is also 1. I don't need those 1's there. They're not required. So we could just write our final answer as x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 5. Okay, let's also take a look at number 18. So look at 18. Okay, it says 2x squared minus 16x equals negative 25. Okay, so this is not in the correct form for the quadratic formula because it is not set equal to 0. Okay, so to make this set equal to 0, we're going to add that 25 to each side. Okay, so 2x squared minus the 16x plus 25 equals 0. Okay, so my a is 2, my b is negative 16, my c is 25. So now when I plug into my quadratic formula, I'll have x equals negative b. So the negative of negative 16 is positive 16 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, so let's simplify underneath the square root. Okay, we get 56. Okay, so that's, let's see, 16 plus or minus the square root of 56 all over 4. Okay, we'll check our square root of 56. It is not a perfect square, so we are then going to try and simplify the square root of 56. So I'm going to start prime factoring. 2 and 18. No, 2 and 28, sorry. 2 and 28. 2 and 14, 2 and 7. So this prime factors into 2, 2, 2, 7. Let's see, so now I have 16 plus or minus 2 square root 14 all over 4. Now again, I want to look at these 3 outside numbers. Okay, and I'm going to ask myself, is there something that they are all divisible by? It has to be even. We don't want to turn anything into a fraction. Okay, so 4 will go into both of these, but 4 won't go into that 2. So we're just going to reduce them all by 2. So 16 divided by 2 is 8. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. There's my final answer. Okay, so do the best you can on the last 2. We'll take a look at them tomorrow in class.